Hello, everyone. We are live on another Facebook Live on a Friday. Thank y'all so much for being here. We are so excited to have Patrick with us today. Welcome, Patrick.
Thanks very much, Renata. It's good to be here.
Very good. So first, and we have Lyle with us today. I want to say hello, Lyle.
Hello, everybody. This is so exciting.
I just want to remind everybody that whenever you post a comment, we are not going to be able to see who it's from a lot of times. So you're welcome to type your name also if you'd like to know who you are. Um, I'm going to go ahead and start. Oh, we have the giveaway also that we have to prepare for at the end of the live. Patrick was so nice to send us a copy of his book, autographed, y'all. I am so excited. I really want this one for me, but a lucky winner is going to get it at the end of this live. So if you have not entered yet, you can run right now to our Instagram page and tag 3 people on our comment of the. It has to be the giveaway. It has a picture of the book. Tag 3 people and share in your stories, and you'll be entered automatically. So I'm going to first introduce Patrick. Patrick McKeown is an international breathing instructor and author based in Ireland. The Breathing Cure from 2021. It's Patrick's newest book. It's a deep dive into the science of breathing. He explores functional breathing for a wide range of health conditions and breathing exercises suitable for adults, children, and teens. These unique exercises improve quality of life with better sleep, health, and performance. Patrick's 2015 book, which was the first book I have ever read when I first got into this world. It's The Oxygen Advantage. And immediately I fell in love and I did not stop reading and learning about breathing and myofunctional therapy since then. But it's available in 14 languages and retains high review ratings on Amazon. I will post links to everything on our Airway Circle Facebook group. If you're not a member yet, please join. And whoever is watching live, write Breathing Cure, just so we know you're here. Anyways, today we're going to be talking several things about the book. If you guys haven't gotten one yet, you can get one on Patrick's website. And when is it going to be available on Amazon? In July?
Yeah, it's July or early August for the United States, but it's currently available for worldwide distribution through our websites. So the US version that comes out in July.
Perfect. I will also make sure that I'll add that on our Facebook group. So if you guys don't have one, you need to get one. It is wonderful. Oh, there we are. We have some people. So Patrick, I will let you give us a better introduction. Oh, Beth's audio is not working. I'm sorry, Beth. Maybe try to get out and log back in and see if you'll get better. I will let you introduce yourself again to the public a little bit better than what I did. Go ahead.
Sure. You did a pretty good job. I came across breathing primarily by accident, and just as we were chatting offline, that many people who work in this field, we come across it because of our own health issues. And like many children, I was growing up with asthma. And if you have asthma, you don't just have asthma, but you have a stuffy nose. And if you have a stuffy nose, you are 2 to 3 times more likely to have moderate to severe sleep disorder breathing. So I was the kid with the stuffy nose with asthma who was falling asleep in class. And then concentration and attention span are affected. And I suppose, really for the younger people, for children in high school, secondary school, for university students, that concentration and attention span and giving these tools to children are probably the most beneficial tools during the formative years. And those tools we use throughout our life. Concentration is our ability to hold our attention on one thing. Attention span is the length of time we hold our attention on one thing. And I was falling asleep. And for me to get grades, it took a lot of work and countless hours studying. Because if you're fatigued, you can look at a page all day, but you're not necessarily absorbing the information. And nobody said anything about, Patrick, are you breathing through your nose or mouth? I was a chronic mouth breather. Nobody said, are you stopping breathing during sleep or do you snore heavy? I was doing that as well. And even when I had an operation on my nose in 1994, and even though my nose still not fully right, Nobody told me to breathe through it afterwards. So it's not enough to treat the nose. We have to treat the behavior. And also by changing breathing exercises, we can make a fundamental difference to breathing patterns for sleep, for asthma, for rhinitis, and everything that's associated with it. Because it's not just a stuffy nose. It's not just mouth breathing. It has huge impacts. And how deep do we go with this one? You know, this is so simple that it has been overlooked by healthcare professionals. And yet it has a massive negative impact on the health of children and adults.
That is unbelievable. Great. I do have a question to start with. When I was reading this book, you mentioned that a sedentary lifestyle has a huge impact on the way the body processes oxygen. How can exercise affect our breathing?
Well, by doing physical exercise, we generate more carbon dioxide. So the gas carbon dioxide is not just a waste gas. I know many times you'll hear about it, bring in as much oxygen as possible, get rid of the waste gas carbon dioxide. All anybody has to do is look at a physiology book about respiration. You'll see that carbon dioxide performs a number of very important roles in the human body, including dilation of blood vessels, dilation of airways. It also assists in hemoglobin, which is the main carrier of oxygen in the blood, releasing oxygen to tissues and organs. And when we do physical exercise, we generate more carbon dioxide. But physical exercise is even better if we do it with our mouths closed. Because whether it's during rest or sleep or physical exercise, if we were to ask any medical doctor, name one function that the mouth does in terms of breathing. Does the mouth moisten air? Does it warm air? Does it regulate volume? Does it harness nasal nitric oxide? Does it do anything? Nothing. The mouth is absolutely, it has zero functions. All it is a hole. So the mouth is a hole whereby air can flow straight down the throat into the lungs. And there's no conditioning. Now, you can imagine then when we think of 25 to 50% of studied children persistently mouth breathing, when we think of 50% of the adult population breathing through an open mouth during sleep. So coming back to your question, physical exercise is really, really important. And it's not that you have to be a runner. I'm certainly not a runner, but I have to get in physical exercise at least a half an hour to an hour per day. And sometimes it's tough, you know, but we have to set the time aside. And I made a commitment in the last number of months because when workload was getting too much, and I said, what's this all about? You know, we're spending 8, 9, 10 hours working and we're not even able to put in a half an hour to an hour physical exercise for ourselves. So what I said, well, the first thing is priority is physical exercise and let the work look after itself. And yeah, emails mightn't be answered for a day or two, but that's fine. At least I'm happier. That's the main thing.
Renata, you're making him proud. Renata called me earlier and she's like, you won't believe it. I went for a half an hour, or not a half hour, geez, half a mile run and my lips were closed the whole time. Are you proud
Excellent.
of me?
Well done. That's absolutely super. So it is.
I actually have never
ahead,
been. I've never been a fan of working out. And it's funny because I used to say, you know, I can't breathe. I don't know how to breathe when I run because I used to have so much pain right here and nobody understood it. Nobody could really help me. So every time, of course, my mouth open when I ran and I just had so much pain, I couldn't do it. And then I read your book and I started trying to run and it really, I cannot believe I was able to run. I think I ended up going to like 3 miles with my lips closed the whole time. And, you know, as soon as I started, my nose started running at first until I got used to it. But now every time I go to the gym, I'm always looking. You get your mouth open. Man, I can't believe it that I've gotten to the point now that I'm able, and I haven't worked out in a long time and I just started again. But being able to run at least half a mile with my lips closed as soon as I started back, it felt really good. So thank you.
For sure. But, you know, and it's funny you make the comment about going to a gym because when you go to a gym, you'll probably see about 90%, if not 100% of people in there with their mouths open, even during low and moderate intensity. You know, there's no reason. If you're going for a fast walk or a light jog, there's no reason why you can't keep your mouth closed. And if your nose is very compromised, use nasal dilators. So, for example, we use little devices. Just help to keep the nose open. At least you can maintain nasal breathing without switching to mouth breathing. And oxygen uptake is better. Oxygen delivery is better. Nasal breathing is involving greater use of the diaphragm breathing muscle. And the diaphragm breathing muscle is not just for respiration, but it provides stabilization for the spine. And mouth breathing is fight or flight. And I think it's because, we probably, throughout our evolution, we only reverted to mouth breathing when we were in times of emergency. That our ancestors were innate nasal breathers, except in an emergency. Even when we were hunting, we kept our mouths closed. So mouth breathing is associated with fight or flight. And as a result now, we have to ask what's happening now with children and adults who are persistently mouth breathing. It's activating or increasing sympathetic drive, which is our fight or flight response. It's fast, it's upper chest breathing. And this fast upper chest breathing is fed from the body back to the brain. The brain interprets fast breathing during rest and sleep, that the body is under threat. So, for example, this is why some breathing techniques, involve fast breathing, because they're stressors. Because anytime we breathe fast, the brain is sensing that the body is under threat. And as a result, then the brain is going to send signaling accordingly. And it's all right doing a short-term stressor, but it's not all right having the mouth open for weeks and months and years upon end.
You're absolutely right.
How do you feel about these like high intensity interval training? So I'm a big indoor cycler, and I have recently started to slow down and when I start mouth breathing, because it does happen. But how in exercise, when you're really like, I think in your book you said no pain, no gain. You were kind of commenting on that. How do you feel about those things?
Well, short term is probably quite beneficial because it is a stressor. And, I think more so with no pain, no gain, I was talking more so about the duration that people are doing physical exercise. And I've seen my own brother do it, and his wife, and doing 100-mile runs. There's nothing ordinary about a 100-mile run. That's a fair amount of stress on the human body, whether it's through the nose or mouth. And if it's something short, high intensity, and even switching to mouth breathing for a short period of time, no problem. We have to look at the bigger picture here. How is breathing outside of the high intensity training? Yeah, so it's I suppose a question of balance.
Yeah. Especially if you start out with some dysfunctional breathing to begin with, and then you're trying to, build endurance with breath holds or, all sorts of things. But I know we're in your book because I loved that chapter.
That is a good point, because a lot of people won't want to do physical exercise if their breathing is suboptimal in the first place. And it's our breathing during physical exercise that's determined by how we breathe during rest. So, for example, if you have a child or a teenager or an adult, and if they're breathing a little bit faster and upper chest during rest, that will translate into suboptimal breathing during physical exercise. They're more likely to gas out too soon, have disproportionate breathlessness, have muscle fatigue. And then it's not a nice feeling, because there's something rewarding about exercise when you can push yourself to a point at which you're sweating and you feel warm. And it's a good state of mind, that place where you were at. But can you imagine somebody with really poor breathing patterns? They're getting breathless just going for a walk. So they're not experiencing that state of a natural high from physical exercise. And all they're experiencing is disproportionate breathlessness. And that's going to put them off.
I was just
that was me.
That was you.
Yes, I hated it. It felt so funny because nobody understood what I was talking about when I would say, I think like I can't breathe, till I read your book.
Yes.
I do have another question. What is the correlation between vagus nerve stimulation and nasal breathing? What are some ways we can stimulate the vagus nerve? You talk about that in your book.
There's a few different ways. So the vagus nerve is wandering throughout the human body. It's innervating all of the major organs, and 80 to 90% of the information is conveyed by the vagus nerve from the body back to the brain or up to the brain. Now, we can stimulate the vagus nerve, and this was first identified, I think, in 1921, when a researcher isolated the heart of the frog, and he stimulated the vagus nerve, and he was able to slow down the heart. So this is really important for helping to influence the autonomic nervous system. Nose breathing during sleep helps to increase heart rate variability. And it's likely that it's happening because it's strengthening the baroreflex. So the baroreflex are baroreceptors in the major blood vessels, in the carotid arteries, and in the aorta. And they're continuously monitoring our blood pressure. And when our blood pressure increases, the baroreceptors send an immediate signal to the blood vessels to dilate and our heart rate to come down, so blood pressure normalizes. And conversely, if our blood pressure drops, the baroreceptors send a message, blood vessels to constrict and the heart rate to increase to normalize blood pressure again. So the sensitivity of the play in the vagal tone, or how well the vagus nerve is functioning. Now, I'm not sure if my internet is chopping in or out here, so I hope it's okay. But so coming back to your question, we can stimulate the vagus nerve, nose breathing during sleep, but also breathing light. And breathing light would be simply having one hand on your chest, one hand just say above your navel, tuning into your breathing pattern and really slowing down your breathing to the point of a light air hunger. That stimulates the vagus nerve. It's vagotropic. And even though, if you were monitoring your heart rate variability during the exercise, your HRV can dip a little bit because there's a slight discomfort. But after the exercise, your HRV will increase. Another way to stimulate the vagus nerve is by breathing with optimal amplitude of the diaphragm. And when we talk about taking a deep breath, we don't have to take a big breath. You can have your hands either side of your lower ribs. And as you breathe in, are you able to push your ribs gently outwards? And as you breathe out, do you feel your ribs gently moving in? And optimal amplitude of the diaphragm is really, really important because the diaphragm breathing muscle plays such an important role in massaging the internal organs, lymphatic drainage, getting rid of waste from the body, for example. But also the diaphragm breathing muscle is connected with the upper airway dilator muscles in the throat. Wow. And this is very important for sleep. And also the diaphragm is connected to the emotions. Now, the thing is, though, when people talk about taking a deep breath, they're not usually taking a deep breath. They're taking a big breath, and it's often a shallow breath. So it's misinterpreted. And then finally, Renata, small breath holds are also stimulating the vagus nerve. So if we have somebody coming in with panic disorder or anxiety, they can often have difficulty following and feeling their breathing because it can make them a little bit panicked, and the air hunger is, makes them quite uncomfortable. So instead we do normal breath in and out through the nose, pinch the nose for about 3 to 5 seconds, and then breathe normal for about 10 to 15 seconds and do it again. That stimulates the vagus nerve. When we talk about the vagus nerve and we talk about bringing the body into relaxation, we should be looking specifically at the exhalation. It's not the inhalation. The inhalation, the vagus nerve steps back. But the exhalation is primarily under the control of the parasympathetic nervous system. And whenever we have a slow and relaxed and prolonged exhalation, that stimulates the vagus nerve. So, for example, you have a patient coming in, and one of those patients which are a bit of a pain, and every now and again we have one of those people coming in. And, it stresses out the worker, the individual. You can step back, you can close your mouth, and nobody even knows you're doing it. You're just taking a very soft breath into your nose and a very relaxed and a slow, gentle exhalation. And the relaxed and slow, gentle exhalation stimulates the vagus nerve, which is secreting acetylcholine, which is causing a slowing of the heart, and the body then conveys signals of calm on the basis of that. All it takes is 90 seconds. So the next time you have a patient coming in and the patient is a pain in the neck, do some slow breathing, especially on the exhalation. And then finally, the last one is to stimulate the vagus nerve, where much of the research over the last 30 years, it's focused on breathing a respiratory rate between 4.5 and 6.5 breaths per minute, with a happy medium being about, say, 5 breaths per minute. Sorry, yeah, 5 breaths per minute. I'm going to repeat that. 6 breaths per minute. And that can be achieved by breathing in for 5 seconds and out for 5 seconds. So normally we have our students put their hands either side of their lower ribs. They are breathing in and out through their nose, and they're breathing in 2, 3, 4, 5, out 2, 3, 4, 5. And that number is an optimal number. So the 6 breaths per minute are bringing the body back into balance.
That's amazing.
It seems like something so simple, but it impacts everything in our bodies. It was so difficult putting my daughter to sleep. I have a 6-year-old girl, and she was that child that did not want to sleep, hyper, didn't want to miss anything. But also, you know, mouth breathing, all the issues that I didn't know very well. And then I started doing the breath hold with her every time we lay down to go to sleep. And in less than 10 minutes, every time she was out.
That's cool.
And
That's great.
before it used to take me an hour, I would lay with her in her bed for an hour before she fell asleep until we started the breath hold. So it works.
These are the small little breath holds.
Yes, well, I was a mouth breather as a child. I slept with my mouth open. I drooled. I had allergic rhinitis, venous pooling, which is the bag under the eyes. I grew a very long face, high vaulted palate, deviated septum, all the issues that we know of. What causes some children to mouth breathe, and how can we help them?
It's a good question. I think it's going to be a combination of different things, and it could be difficult to pinpoint it, but there's no question that genetics plays a role. And if you have a child who's born with a high upper narrow palate, there's not enough room already for example, we have to consider that the roof of the mouth is the floor of the nose. And if the palate is high, the nasal cavity is going to be a little bit compromised. And as a result, then, if that child also has rhinitis, which can be genetic, of course, it's influenced by environment, it's influenced by breathing. So if the child is feeling air hunger, breathing through the nose, they'll switch to mouth breathing. That's inevitable. So then we have to ask, what is causing air hunger? Air hunger could be because of enlarged adenoids at the back of the nose. Air hunger could be because of a small nose, a breathing pattern disorder. Because if the child has, say, symptoms of asthma or a little bit of anxiety, if they're breathing hard and fast, the hard and fast breathing creates a bit of resistance in the nose so that they feel they're not getting enough air. You know, and rhinitis, as I spoke about. Now, there's other factors. So then we should be asking, well, what helps to ensure adequate craniofacial growth? And of course, that's going to be related to if the baby is tongue-tied, that needs to be addressed early on if possible, lip tie. Breastfeeding is not just for nutrition, but it's also about manipulation of the muscles of the face necessary for craniofacial growth. The food that the kid is eating. So, for example, eating hard food to exercise the jaws as opposed to the normal food that children are eating. So I think it's really difficult to pinpoint it, but there's no question that genetics does definitely play a role. And, you know, even if we were to look at children with compromised airways, we know that they're at a greater risk of sleep disorder breathing. And no child should snore. It's different with an adult. No adult should snore. But if a child snores, it's more serious. And a child doesn't even have to snore. If you even hear their breathing during sleep, that can indicate there's a resistance to breathing. So in an ideal situation, we should never hear the child breathing as they breathe, not because they've stopped breathing. And if we were to look at obstructive sleep apnea, whereby they stop breathing due to collapse of the upper airways for 2 breaths, all it takes is 1 apnea per hour to be clinically significant. And, you know, I spoke about adenoidectomy and tonsillectomy when I was talking at Samantha's there on Saturday. The efficacy of adenoidectomy and tonsillectomy was unknown pretty much until 2010. despite it being carried out for 40 years, in actual fact for 50 years, the early 70s. Now, they looked at 578 children, and this is a paper by Bhattacharjee, and it was published in the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine. Out of the 578 children, only 27% of them had their sleep apnea fully resolved. 73% of them continued to have residual sleep apnea post-surgery. Now, on the basis of those results, we have to question that it's not just the adenoids and the tonsils which are contributing to sleep disorder breathing. Craniofacial growth, of course, is going to be an important one here. Is the mouth closed? Is the tongue resting on the roof of the mouth? And is the tongue helping to direct the growth of the jaws forward? So even though, you know, the pediatric doctors will see adenoidectomy and tonsillectomy as a cure for sleep apnea, it is not. And much more, and if I was to do it again, this is only my own opinion, I put my own daughter through adenoidectomy and tonsillectomy. And then I brought her to a functional dentist because she has my genetics, which are a bit messed up. She's got a high narrow palate, she's got a small mouth, and she's also got tootogenesis. And so she's congenitally missing one tooth, an incisor. And what that points to is if children or adults are missing teeth, it points they have an increased risk of sleep disorder breathing because, of course, the mouth is too small. And so in any event, I brought her to ENT first, had tonsils and adenoids removed, lip tied on, etc. And then I brought her to Dr. Tony O'Connor in Cork, and he put her into an ALF, and the ALF expanded her jaws, and it was quick. I'm talking about, we could see a noticeable difference in 3 or 4 months. She had a gummy smile. It got rid of that. So when I look back,
wow,
if I was to do it again, I would have put her into the ALF first. Because had we got normal craniofacial growth to make room for the airways, then nasal breathing we would have been able to restore nasal breathing. And, you know, unfortunately, medical doctors and dentists don't talk to each other. I know that the dental industry would be very happy to talk to the medical doctors. But for some reason, the medical doctors don't feel that maybe they are the only people who have command of the situation. The reality is that medicine has let down children and medicine has let down adults, and not just in sleep, but they have let down in many spheres of health. And I'm talking about respiration, and I'm also talking about mental health. Because when I see people coming into me over the years and coming in with depression and panic disorder and anxiety, and when I start questioning them, just asking them a couple of questions, how is your sleep? How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Their sleep is often lousy. And these people are going to their doctor and their psychiatrist and their psychologist, and what's being overlooked is their sleep, and what's being overlooked is their breathing. Now, the dentist, the dental hygienist, the myofunctional therapist have such an important role to play because they can identify the risk factors associated with sleep disorder breathing in the pediatric and adult population early on. And also, as a man, I don't go to my medical doctor. I've been to a medical doctor once in 20 years. And the only reason being because we live in a cottage here in the west of Ireland, and I ran through it and there was a door that's a bit too low and it could slip my head. So other than that, it would never have happened. So, you know, how many men then? They are not visiting their medical doctors unless they really need to. But we have to visit our dentist, and we have to visit our dentist every 6 months. And the dentist can identify the trauma in the upper airways, scalloping of the tongue, the risk factors. And it could be the dentist that should be telling the client in front of them, you know what, you may have a risk of sleep apnea. You know, it would be worth your while just getting it checked out. So it's really time for medical doctors to start looking at the role that dentists can play here, and to have a team approach or a multidisciplinary approach, because just thinking that they know everything is not the ideal way to go.
Now that you say that, I had a patient which he is happy for me to share this story with everybody. He came in one day, and it was right after I had come back from Atlanta, and I had taken my first course in Airway. It was with Dr. Tom Colquitt, who was a retired dentist. He was fantastic. But he was the first one to introduce me into this world. And then I searched for your book. But shortly after, I had this patient with a huge fat tongue, scalloping, low tongue posture. And I started asking him questions about sleep and choking on the food and difficulty swallowing and all these things that could be related to what I was seeing. And he just started looking at me going, oh, how do you know this stuff? And I asked him, when was the last time you had a physical done? Because of course, as a hygienist, I can't be like, I think you have sleep apnea. You need to go get it checked out. So I'm like, when was the last time you had a physical done? Because like, I cannot even remember. And so I encouraged him to get a physical done. 2 years later, he came back, he sat on my chair and he cried. And he thanked me for bugging him enough to go get a physical. And this is unrelated to Airway. Well, could be, I guess. But when he left the office, he said that my voice stayed in the back of his head, which that's kind of common when I talk to people. And he called his doctor right away, made an appointment. He had no symptoms, no issues, other, health-related issues. And they found out he had prostate cancer. So it was something that was really nothing that I was looking at. But he came in 2 years later and he cried and he was like, I'm in remission now. And if it was not for you bugging me about, the physical, which was me looking at sleep apnea symptoms, he would not have gotten this physical done. Who knows if he would have been here. So it's so important.
Intuition might have been kicking in there as well,
Definitely. Man, he's getting his sleep apnea treated now, so it's great. But
it's amazing asking just a few extra questions.
Yes.
And not even just any few questions. Very particular questions that 5 minutes could really change somebody's life.
Yes, and that's really where hygienists come in. We keep the patients 45 minutes to an hour. We end up building a relationship with them. It's not like in the doctor's office or even the dentist that usually for an exam you see them for 5-10 minutes. Hygienists are there talking. How's your day going? How many patients fall asleep in our chair? I had patients that would snore. I would stop working and just look around. Can anybody see what's happening? Like, this is a sleeping issue.
Yes.
And we think as hygienists,
the other thing is as well, Renata, that people will feel more comfortable.
Yes.
Because you're not there, it's more kind of a chat, that information can get out. And I think it's really and that's why I wrote about it in the book. I don't know how far you've gone into it, but I'm a layperson. I'm looking into the dental industry, and I just feel actually the dental industry were too slow off the mark as well. There are brilliant dentists and brilliant doctors, medical doctors, and there are brilliant orthodontists, but the industry, it just really missed out on the whole sleep, the dental industry.
Definitely.
And because it's up to the individuals who are at the echelons, especially in the training universities, the professors in universities, professors of dentistry, to be really putting this knowledge into the hands of their students, as opposed to being 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe even 100 years behind the curve. None of this information is new. Like sleep apnea has been identified going back to Charles Dickens. It was first called the Pickwickian syndrome. And Dr. Christian Guilleminault, he coined the phrase obstructive sleep apnea back in the 1970s. The AHI index has been around that long time. And if we look at, I have a journal, and I'll show it to you for a second.
Yes.
So this is called the Dental Cosmos. And this was written back in 1909.
Wow.
And it talks about the importance of nasal breathing during sleep for children.
Wow.
And it talks about the connection between mouth breathing causing crooked teeth. And also that the children with their mouth open, they're inattentive in the school. And you'll find this article, you'll find it online. And if you send me an email, I'll send it on to you. But, you know,
Awesome.
none of this information is new. And that is the sad part, that we have highly intelligent people armed with medical degrees debating something for 100 years and not reaching a conclusion. And all in that time, you know, the overlooking of breathing has been significant. Like, I'm currently writing a new book, and it's on concentration and attention span.
I can't keep up with you.
No,
I have to read faster.
When I started writing this one 4 years ago, but I just never got around to finishing it. And then the breathing cure kind of took over for a while. And you know yourself, and they're always long projects. But when I go back to, when I think of when I was back at school and how society demands that we should be able to concentrate and hold our attention, nobody was teaching us how. You know, we're sending kids to school. We're saying to these kids, you need to get good grades. You need to be at this A or B or whatever student. And if you don't get this, you're not going to get into university, and all of that stuff and the nonsense that we put our kids through. And society is demanding it. And nobody is telling these kids and teaching them, how can you hold your attention? How can you concentrate? You cannot concentrate or hold your attention on anything if you've got poor sleep quality. And I remember, you know, even as an adult, anybody who's listening here, there's always going to be a day that we've had a bad night's sleep. There's always going to be a day every now and again. And you wake up that morning and you feel as if you've had a hangover, that you're after drinking, you know, good quantity of alcohol. You feel that way and you just don't have the focus. But can you imagine a child, day in, day out, week in, week out, month after month, and that pressure, that kid having to sit down for 6 or 7 or 8 hours a day, it's just absolutely incredible. So this is the next
pediatrician. I had a pediatrician say to me, we were talking about ADHD and sleep disordered breathing and mouth breathing. And he said, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did ADHD cause the sleep disorder, or did the sleep disorder cause the ADHD? And, you know, I didn't respond, but so this is a pediatrician looking at ADHD, vice versa. The ADHD is keeping the child from sleeping well.
And what would happen?
Are you going to sit there and debate that, or let's try to fix the mouth breathing, see if it helps? Yeah, one little thing at a time. You know, I'm slowly working on this.
No, but I can understand, because when somebody comes in armed with doctor in their title, it can be a little bit intimidating when those of us who don't have a doctorate, but it doesn't mean they're right. And the other thing is, there is a bi-directional relationship going on there. You know, earlier on I spoke about, say, somebody coming in with depression, and when you talk to them, they'll tell you that they're absolutely exhausted in the morning. Is it the depression which is causing the exhaustion? That's often what the doctor thinks, so it's happening. But it's likely, or it could be, that when this individual has insomnia and obstructive sleep apnea going together, it increases the risk of depression. So there is a feedback there. If the mind is racing, it's difficult to fall asleep. But if you don't get good quality sleep, your mind is going to be racing. And I remember, I think it was Dr. Stephen Sheldon. I stood up at a conference and he pretty much said there's no such thing as ADHD. The problem is poor sleep. And if we look at Karen Bonnock's study that was carried out in Stratford-upon-Avon in the UK, and it was published in 2012, I think, in the European Journal of Pediatrics, she looked at 11,000 children over 8 years. This is a longitudinal study with a really significant population. Children with sleep disorder breathing, if untreated by age 5, these kids had a 40% increased risk of special education needs by age 8. Now, that's a car crash waiting to happen, because the brain is developing during the formative years. And if these kids are not getting decent sleep, it's causing pretty much brain damage, for want of another word.
Let that sink in for a minute. You know, this is unbelievable. Lyle, do you want to read some questions from the audience?
Yeah, we have quite a few questions here.
Give me the simple ones.
The simpler ones. What are we doing? How do you feel about mask wearing as schools affecting these types of things. Well, I mean, if the child has dysfunctional breathing and then you put a mask on them,
it's a problem.
It's a problem.
Yes. I cannot say with regards wearing a masks, if a child has good functional breathing patterns, is it going to have an effect? I don't know. But what I could say is that if you have a child with dysfunctional breathing or with a tendency towards anxiety or asthma or ADHD, for example, they're wearing a mask which is pooling carbon dioxide, which is fine. Pooling carbon dioxide is safe. That's fine. It's only 5% CO2 going into the mask. It's the quantity that was in the lungs anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You're breathing that CO2 laden air back into the lungs. It's increasing CO2 in the blood. And the child will feel air hunger. Now, that's when the child can respond. How does the child respond to the feeling of air hunger? Do they now start mouth breathing and breathing fast and shallow? And then that can bring on panic and anxiety and fatigue.
Yeah.
And I remember getting my hair cut, it was about 5 months ago, and the barber, I had a mask on, the barber had a mask on, and I was listening to the barber breathe, and he was only a young guy, he was only about 25 years of age, and it was almost as if he was hyperventilating behind the mask.
Wow.
And, and it just, the thought struck me that this is happening a lot of people, that are being told to wear masks and they're not being told how to breathe while wearing them. I put a video out on YouTube about 5 or 6 months ago on the same thing. And like, people lambast me sometimes for saying, why not tell people not to wear masks? Listen, I don't know enough information there to tell anybody not to wear masks. The only thing I do know is that how people can respond if they've got an increased sensitivity to carbon dioxide. And the other thing about wearing a mask is it's not going to reduce oxygen in the blood. It will reduce your blood oxygen saturation a small amount, but that's because of the increase of carbon dioxide and what's called a right shift of the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. But basically, in the presence of carbon dioxide, hemoglobin is releasing oxygen more readily. And as a result, you could see a little dip in the SpO2, but that mightn't necessarily be a bad thing. The problem is the person's reaction to wearing the mask.
Very, very good.
Can air hunger be purely from habitual mouth breathing and low tongue posture?
Yes. Air hunger will arise due to a number of different reasons. And certainly if a child is having their mouth open, they're typically breathing fast and they're breathing more upper chest. Now, it takes a while for a child to switch from diaphragmatic breathing to upper chest breathing. But even as adults, if we were to look down at our chest and take a breath through the mouth, when you take a breath through the mouth, you typically see that you engage, there's a greater amplitude of the chest. So a child then who's persistently mouth breathing, that they get used to, it could be a larger minute ventilation or larger minute volume. There's less resistance to breathing through the mouth during wakefulness than the nose. The nose imposes a resistance to your breathing during wakefulness that's 2 to 3 times that of the mouth. Now, it's the opposite during sleep. It's the mouth imposes a resistance to your breathing that's 2.5 times that of the nose during sleep. So during wakefulness, your nose slows down your breathing, and mouth breathing is fast breathing. It's easy. Take them out. It's easy. Take air into your lungs. Very fast, no resistance to your breathing during wakefulness. So a child has been mouth breathing for a while, and no child is able to mouth breathe with their tongue resting in the roof of the mouth. Not possible. If you were to now say, put 3/4 of your tongue into the roof of your mouth, and with your tongue in the roof of the mouth, try and breathe through your mouth. It's not possible. So you could take in a wisp of air, but if you were a mouth breathing kid, you're not going to have your tongue resting in the roof of the mouth. So it's not necessarily the tongue resting in the roof of the mouth that's causing the air hunger, but it's the persistent mouth breathing, fast breathing, shallow breathing. And then when the child switches to nose breathing, they feel they're not getting enough air through the nose. But do the breathing exercise. By the way, all of the breathing exercise for children are free online. We put the program out there.
That website is amazing.
2 years ago.
Patients there all the time. It's wonderful.
And we have an app as well, Buteyko Clinic app, and all of the children's exercise. The app is free, and all of the exercise for kids are free, and many of the exercise for adults are free. Now, the app is going through a couple of glitches, but if you download it, Buteyko Clinic app, the videos, we're fixing them. It's just a couple of bugs at the moment, so, but we'll get around that.
I have had a couple of patients that I tell them, open your mouth and breathe the brain in and then suction. There's a huge difference. So everybody needs to try it right now, and you will feel the difference of how you breathe through your nose. And they just look at me like, how did I not know this?
We are getting ready.
So when you put your tongue out, is it? You breathe in through your mouth with the mouth open, and then when you switch to nose breathing, you feel the difference.
Yes.
Yeah. There's no question.
Suctioning. Yeah, suctioning your tongue up there. You cannot, if you suction your tongue, you cannot breathe through your mouth. That's the importance of tongue posture. We are getting ready to do our giveaway in just a little bit. So if you have not entered, run to our Instagram page and tag 3 people and share the post of the book, so you can maybe be the winner of the Breathing Cure book signed by Patrick McKeown. At the end of this live, you'll have it by next week.
It could be worth a fortune in a few years. So
yes,
jump in there.
Of course, in our world, you, Zaggy, anything signed by you guys are like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's interesting. I started highlighting things that I liked in the book.
Me too.
And then I'm like, I'm painting this entire book. I have to stop.
Yes, that's what I'm doing. I do have a last question. Since Mother's Day is coming up, let's talk a little bit more about some conditions that many women suffer with, like fibromyalgia, migraines, TMJ disorder. How does pain relate to sex hormones, and how can breathing help?
This is another totally bizarre, that women's breathing has been identified to be different than men since 1905. And yet, I've been teaching breathing for 20 years. And the only reason that I really delved down this route was I was working with an Irish musician, and he told me about his fiancée. She was having symptoms of PMS. And I knew over the years you'd come across it here and there. And of course, being a man being a man, kind of overlook it a little bit. But then I started digging a little bit deeper into it, and I was saying, how on earth did we miss this one? I think it's huge, So if we talk about the monthly cycle, and I always remember the different phases by M.F. Pauls. So you have menstruation, and then you have follicular, and then you have proliferative, and then ovulation, luteal cycle, secretory. And it's during the mid-luteal phase to mid-follicular phase that there's an increase in progesterone and estrogen. And progesterone is a respiratory stimulant. So that will cause breathing to be faster and harder. And carbon dioxide levels can drop by up to 25%. And this is post-ovulation, so it's between days 10 and days 22 of the monthly cycle. This increases pain perception, and it reduces pain thresholds. It can contribute to a feeling of air hunger or suffocation. It can also contribute to, for instance, panic and anxiety, fatigue. And in some studies, when females met the diagnostic criteria for fibromyalgia during the mid-luteal phase, but they didn't meet the diagnostic criteria for fibromyalgia outside of that phase. So there's clearly a link between hormonal changes in females and their breathing, and the change in their breathing, how it can contribute to their symptoms. It's really important for females to track their breath hold time, because it's a good indicator of whether they are breathing functionally or not. We call it the Bolt score. And it's very simple. Take a normal breath in and out. You're sitting down. You need to watch your second hand. You take a normal breath in and out through your nose and pinch your nose and hold. And you're timing it in seconds until you feel the first definite desire to breathe. And if she notices that her Bolt score is dropping during days 10 to days 22, mid-luteal phase, then she knows, then she gets an idea that breathing and hormonal changes are having some impact on her breathing. Very important to breathe through the nose, slow down breathing, and and to optimize breathing patterns, as opposed to breathing fast and shallow, which is inefficient and does nothing to alleviate the feeling of suffocation. And using these different techniques, there's many exercises, different exercises if you have anxiety or panic, depending on the person. But Yeah, this is huge. And the other is postmenopause as well. So women postmenopause, progesterone level obviously reduces or stops or levels off. And as a result, progesterone is a protective to the upper airways during sleep for younger females. So the increase in progesterone actually reduces the risk of sleep apnea. But with postmenopause, with the reduction in the production of progesterone, sleep apnea is more rife. Sleep disorder breathing increases in postmenopausal women by up to 300%. And yeah, it can be also, of course, in relation to body fat as well, the way it's distributed. Once we hit 40, I'm nearly 50 now. So, you know, you're hitting 50, you start to notice that it's not so easy to keep off the few pounds. You start putting a little bit of fat in your tongue and your throat, on the abdomen. And the problem with fat on the abdomen is that it impinges movement of the diaphragm. And the diaphragm breathing muscle is connected with the upper airway dilator muscle. So, you know, there's a lot of kind of connections here. And yeah, so I can imagine females with PMS and nobody talking about hormonal changes in breathing. It's been a shame because they could have a tool that could help them.
That is so true. Oh my goodness. Is everybody ready to do our giveaway?
Oh, exciting.
I'm not sure if I can share my screen. Let's see if I can do the
anybody
share.
else has any last minute questions, go ahead and post them here. I'm just going to double check we didn't miss anybody's questions.
I'm not sure if it's going to let me. We will try. Can everybody see it?
Go.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, awesome. So here we go. 5, 3, 2, 1. The winner of the book. Congratulations.
Okay, you gotta do it again. You gotta do it again. I already have it.
It's her.
This isn't rigged, I promise. Oh,
That's so funny. No, that is not a good.
I reckon that was a little bit of a fix there, guys. Come on.
You guys are seeing this is live, I promise.
Mine is flagged. I will drag for a moment.
So I have to do it again. I don't know if it's gonna work. Hold on.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh, I lost it.
I'm so sorry. How did I even get in there? Wow. I must have shared too much.
Let's see if we can do it again. I'm sorry about that. Well, you can totally, get it in raffle again. Let's see.
It better not be me again.
Ta-da-da! Oh, it's not letting me. Oh my god.
Oh no.
See, Lyle, we're gonna do this another time. How do I stop sharing this? Let's see. Oh my goodness.
Sorry, everybody.
Okay, I'll do it again later. And I'll do it live on Instagram so you guys can
Here we go.
Listen to it. Oh my gosh. Anyway, Patrick, thank you so much for accepting our invitation, for being here. We know that there are so many professionals out there that share the same passion that we do for sharing knowledge and sharing all of this important information that we wish we knew when we were kids. Mm-hmm. So if you guys listening, if you guys think that this is something important, please share on your personal Facebook page. You have no idea who you might reach. There might be that mother that is spending, her nights awake worrying about her children, or she's having issues, or her husband is snoring next to her. So please, you never know who you're going to reach. Please share this on your personal page so we can't do Airway Circle without you. We're here just as a platform, but each one of you listening, you guys are part of this, and it's all of our responsibility to share and reach as many people as we can. So thanks everybody for listening and being here. Patrick, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Any last words?
Yeah, I think something with breathing, for people to realize the depth and the application of it. This isn't just about breathing or any sort of breathing. This is not take a full deep breath or nothing like this. This is about optimizing your own breathing patterns, and it starts with breathing through the nose. You can decongest your nose within a few minutes by simply holding your breath. If you slow down your breathing, you can influence your autonomic nervous system. You can bring relaxation to the body and mind. And this is essential to prepare body and mind for deep sleep. Just as what you spoke about with your kid, using a little breath hold exercise. We also do slow breathing for people with insomnia. We want to dampen the sympathetic distress response. We want to increase the relaxation response. 25 years ago, I came across this by accident. And I had always got cold hands and cold feet. And I started practicing breathing less air for a period of time to improve the biochemistry of my breathing. And within a few minutes, I could feel the temperature increasing in my hands. So you can improve your blood circulation and oxygen delivery. You can help open up your airways. You can improve your sleep, and you can improve your state of mind. I'm not overselling it. And this is not typically the breathing that you hear that's being done. We need to go deeper. But they're very, very simple tools and techniques. Put them into practice yourself. That's the best way to see.
Fantastic. Do you have anything else to say, Lael?
No.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
It has been wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. Next week, we're going to be talking about pelvic floor dysfunction on Clubhouse. We have 2 Clubhouse meetings every week, every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Not sure what time it is in Ireland, but we are having tons of fun on Clubhouse. We have had amazing, fantastic speakers and so much incredible information shared. So if you guys are not on Clubhouse or need an invite, you can message any of us. We'll get you in. But pelvic floor dysfunction is going to be a talk this week, so don't miss it. We love you guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. We'll see everybody later. Bye-bye.
Bye.